Hi, I'm Katie Jones and welcome to International Quilting Day with Crafter's Companion. Today we are going to make not a patchwork project, but we are going to make a little quilted pouch that is perfect for holding all of your bits and pieces, as well as when you go to class and you need somewhere to take your scissors, your folding ruler, your rotary cutter. What else have we got? We've got some pens. It just holds everything. It's a really roomy little pouch and it has a zip in it, but it's not a tricky zip. So if you are afraid of zips, if you've never sewn a zip before, this is a great introduction to sewing a zip. So let us get started. Now, first of all, you will need some zip. So I've got zip on a roll. We need that. We need some erasable pens or an erasable pen, whether that is a water erasable, air erasable, or iron away. You need an erasable marking pen or pencil. You need some quilting clips. You'll need a ruler of some sort, a quilting ruler, rotary cutter, and it's always good to have some scissors, and also some spray and stay. Now this is a temporary adhesive for fabric and it's really useful. You'll use that all the time. Once you get started with it, that's it. You'll never stop using it. So we're going to cut our fabrics into the following pieces. You need to cut from your outer fabric for the bottom front of your pouch. You need to cut a piece that is a bit bigger than your finished piece because we're going to quilt it and it kind of shrinks down, and then you're going to trim it so it's all nice and tidy. So you are going to cut a 9.5 inch by an 11.5 inch piece of fabric for your front from your outer fabric, your wadding and your lining. 9.5 by 11.5. You are also going to cut for the top section of the front. You're going to cut a piece of fabric that is 3.5 by 11.5, and you're going to cut that from the outer fabric, the lining fabric again, and also your wadding. And you need 3 pieces for the back. So this, you are going to cut 3 pieces, one from your wadding, one from your lining, and one from your outer fabric. And each of those are going to be 11.5 inches. So once you have cut all of those, you're going to quilt them. Now, you don't have to do any kind of fancy quilting on here. I've just literally stitched in a grid fashion, but you could use this to practice your fancy stitching. You could use this to use our quilting pattern guides if you've practiced with those. You could do like a big piece of quilting on a much larger quilt sandwich and then cut your pieces for your pouch from that larger piece, and then use them all together. So I've quilted the back panel and the front 2 panels as well. But again, you don't necessarily need to do that at all. You just need to hold them all together. So I'm going to just use the stick and spray for fabric, just to show you how you can hold all your pieces in place. I would not do it on my cutting mat usually, but this needs a little bit of a clean anyway. So usually on the floor or on a table that is wipeable, just give it a spray. You need to make sure that you are in a ventilated room, so a room that has got a window wide open. Do not do this with pets around. Do not do this with small children around. It is an adhesive. It will make you a little bit lightheaded if you are using it without proper ventilation. So once you've done that, as you can see, they kind of stick together. So they're not like tightly stuck together, but you can give them a wiggle and they are nicely stuck together. Now what I'm going to do for this piece is I'm just going to trim this down to the finished size. So I'm not going to quilt this at all. I'm going to set that aside for now and I'm going to concentrate on my zipper. So I've already prepared some pieces, quilted them and then trimmed them down. And that is going to make the front of my bag. So what I've done here, I've quilted them up and then I've trimmed them down to 2.5 by 10.5 for the top section of my front panel. And then I've done 10.5 by 9.5 for my front bottom panel. Then I'm going to get my zip. With zips in a roll, you get a roll of zip. You also get all of these zip pulls as well. So you want to make sure when you're about to cut your zip off that you push all of those to one side, because you do not want to accidentally cut them off. Because trying to get them back onto the zip once you've pulled them off is not a lot of fun. I'm going to pull all of those well out the way and then take your zip and you want to make sure that it overlaps so you've got a bit of extra room to play with. And because you're using the zips on the roll, you've got plenty of room to play with. Trim my zip off like that. And I've got a nice long piece of zip that is bigger than my front panel, wider than my front panel. Okay. So I'm going to push this zip pull so that it is towards the end but not quite at the end. And what you can do is you can just stick a little staple in the end here, or you can stitch across it, and that way you're not going to pull that zip pull off. Okay? And because you've pulled it to the end and your zip is a little bit longer, you can have that hanging off the end of your fabric and it's not going to get in the way. And then you're going to clip it in place like so. Now you've got the zip, you've got it teeth side facing down, so teeth side facing your fabric. You can clip that like that, and then I'm going to sew, using my zipper foot, I'm going to sew along there as close to the teeth as I can get. And then I shall come back and show you the next section. Now we've sewn that on like that, and we can just turn that over and you can just give that a good press, and that keeps your zip out of the way. Now what you can also do is just top stitch along this edge here to keep it all tidy. I am not going to do that now, but it does make things a little bit tidier. And we're going to repeat what we've just done on the other side. I'm going to just make sure that our top and the upper part of the front, so the front bottom and the front top are matched up, so they're nice and aligned, and they're not going to slip out of each other's way and make a wonky pouch. So I'm going to sew this zip on and then come back and show you the next section. My zip is all sewn into place, and at this point we need to open it, move it out into the middle of the top of the pouch so that we don't accidentally chop this zipper pull off, because we really don't want to do that. Ask me how I know that you really don't want to do that. It's no fun trying to unpick a zip when you've stitched it in place in two places and then you've top stitched. It's not a lot of fun at all. So we're going to trim off the edges of the zip of each end. You can do that with your rotary cutter. It does with you're going over plastic, so it can dull your blade. So scissors are sometimes a better idea there, but you can also have like a bag making or a paper or a kind of heavy duty rotary cutter, and just mark on it that that's the one that you use for other crafts. So it's not necessarily just for fabric. So you might use it to cut wadding and things like that, because your blades do dull a little bit quicker when you're not just cutting fabric. So there we go, we've got the outer panel all completely done, and I'm just going to trim down the back to the right size. Get my ruler out. I'm going to stand up for this because if I stay sat down I can't reach properly. So I'm going to trim this to 10.5 wide by 11 tall. Start at the right side of the mat. Ten and a half inches wide. And 11 tall. Now this is the piece of fabric that I used the stick and spray on. So it's adhered in place, but it's not permanently quilted. You can use a permanent adhesive, or you can just quilt that in place. You can even use a fusible wadding or a fusible fleece, and that is great also. Okay, so now we've got the two pieces together. Sit back down, and they're both the same size. And what you're going to do now is you're going to turn it into a pouch. So we want to place it so that the linings are facing. And trim that little thread off. The linings are facing. You can just put your zip a little bit over and clip all the way around with your quilt clips, or you can pin it, but quilt clips are perfect for this. And then we're going to sew, once we've clipped all the way around, we're going to sew all of the way around using a 1/8 of an inch or a very narrow, almost to the edge seam allowance. So I will do that, come back and show you the next step. Now I've sewn all of the way around, and my pouch is now looking like a pouch, but we've still got the raw edges. And what we're going to do there is we're just going to make a quilt binding, or you could use a shop bought bias binding. You don't have to make your own binding, but I've just used the same fabric as my lining fabric and cut 2-inch strips, and enough strips to go all of the way around, just as I would with a normal quilt binding. Now you're going to just sew them end to end and then fold in half and press all of the way along to make your binding. And when you've got your binding, you are going to place it matching up the raw edges, and you can clip it in place, leave a little tail at the start, and then sew with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance all of the way around, just stopping at each corner and pivoting just as you would a quilt. So let's do that now. Let's just show you how we get to the first corner. You can lengthen your stitch a little bit for this if you like. And it just helps you get through all of the layers because there are quite a lot of layers. You've got 2 layers of wadding, you've got 2 layers of lining, 2 layers of outer fabric. So there's a lot of layers going on here. If you've got a walking foot, this is the time that, you know, a walking foot comes in super useful. Before you get to the very end, you want to stop about 1/4 inch just before the edge. Now pull your quilt out, or your pouch out, and then if I pull this out completely and just trim the thread, I can show you. So we're going to pull it out, we're going to fold it back 45 degrees, and then fold back over, and then carry on sewing right from the end. So you can add a little pin or a clip and then sew 1/4 inch right from the end. And you're going to continue doing that all of the way around. Okay, so then when you've sewn all your binding all the way around, you're just going to finish off the edges. So just tuck in one edge of the binding underneath the other one and carry on sewing, and that tucks in your edge. Then you're going to fold over your binding to the reverse of your pouch, like so. Just clip it in place, and then hand stitch all the way around like I've done here. You can also machine stitch, but I just think that the hand stitching just gives it a really nice professional finish, and it's actually really relaxing just doing a little bit of hand stitching every now and again. And it's something that we don't always do necessarily enough of, I don't think. And that's it. Once you've finished sewing all of the way around with your hand stitch, your little quilted zipped pouch is all finished and ready for you to shove full of your bits and pieces and pop in your bag, take off to class, keep all your things safe. I mean, wouldn't this make a great gift for somebody? And you could fill it with like stationery. It would make a really nice pouch for work, a cosmetic pouch, anything. You could use any kind of fabric, cork fabrics, or maybe like a faux leather, something like that. You wouldn't necessarily need the wadding then. And I think it's a really nice little gift, something that I know I'd appreciate if someone made for me. Subtle hints. And so all of the project pages, everything is on the website. You can download, you can follow just the link at the bottom of the screen here. There's a downloadable PDF of that with all of the instructions and this video to go alongside with it. I hope you enjoyed making our quilted zipped pouch, and I hope you have a very happy International Quilting Day.